All right, let's get right into it. We're looking at a showdown between four absolute monsters of German engineering. But here's the thing, one of them didn't just win, it walked away with it. We're gonna break down the science of this drag race to figure out exactly how. So let's unpack this battle. The really interesting part isn't just who won, it's why they won so convincingly. And I'll give you a hint, it's not just about who has the biggest horsepower number. It's about how that power actually makes it to the pavement. First up, let's meet the lineup. Every single one of these cars is a masterpiece, the absolute peak of what Germany can build. But they all have a very, very different way of getting the job done, especially when you look under the hood. Okay, so just look at this chart. You can see there are basically two teams here. You've got the old school muscle, the pure V8s and the Audi and Mercedes, super powerful, but they're the lightweights. And then you have the high-tech hybrids, the BMW and the Porsche. Their power and torque numbers are just astronomical. But, and this is a big but, they are carrying a huge weight penalty for all that tech. We're talking almost half a ton heavier. The driver of the Porsche pretty much said it all right there. And that sets up the big question for this race. Can a mountain of horsepower from a super advanced hybrid system actually beat the simple laws of physics? Can it overcome all that extra weight? So let's get to the main event, the standing start quarter-mile drag race. This is it, the purest test of raw, straight-line acceleration. This is where we see how that whole power versus weight argument really shakes out. And the result? Well, it wasn't even a contest. The Porsche just laid down an absolutely blistering time of 10.7 seconds. That is insanely fast, especially for a car that heavy. This chart really shows you the whole story. The Porsche was a full 0.6 of a second faster than the Audi and the BMW, which actually tied for a distant second. Now, for those of you who don't follow drag racing, 0.6 of a second, that's not a gap. That's a different zip code. It's an eternity. The host of the race, I think he summed it up perfectly. This wasn't just a win, it was a complete and total trouncing. You could see the shock on the other drivers' faces. The Porsche's dominance right off the line was just absolute. But hold on, because this is where the plot really thickens. To get what's really going on with the Porsche, we have to look at a totally different kind of race, a rolling start. Because this test reveals something fascinating, a potential weakness in these powerful hybrid systems. So for this first test, they tried to simulate a real-world scenario. Imagine you're just cruising on the highway, 50 miles an hour, car in its most comfortable, efficient setting, and then you suddenly need to floor it. The cars are totally relaxed, they're not expecting a race. And what happened? A complete flip. The results were turned completely upside down. The lighter, simpler V8 cars, the Audi and the Mercedes, they just took off and left the hybrids for dead. The hybrids were caught completely sleeping. The driver in the BMW just yelled it out, and he hit the nail on the head. In that comfort mode, the electric motor was off, the engine was just kind of loafing along. So when he stomped on the gas, the car's computer had to scramble to wake everything up, and that split-second delay was all it took to lose. Okay, so for round 2 of the rolling race, they changed one tiny but absolutely critical variable. This time, all the cars were switched into their sportiest, most aggressive settings. Engines on, revs up, hybrid systems primed and ready to go. And just like that, everything flipped back again. With their systems wide awake, the Porsche and the BMW were just gone. It wasn't even a fair fight. The instant kick from the electric motors, combined with the V8s, was something the pure gasoline cars just had no answer for. So, this brings us right to the heart of it. This is the Porsche's secret weapon. It's the reason it destroyed everyone in the drag race and in that second rolling race. It's all about something called instant torque. Look, here's the simplest way to think about it. A gasoline engine has to build up speed. It has to rev up to make its full power. But an electric motor? It's like a light switch. The second you hit the pedal, you get 100% of its twisting force, its torque. It's instant. And that instant punch completely fills the one tiny gap where a gas engine is weakest, right at the very beginning. So now, we can put all the pieces of the puzzle together. The drag race results, those weird rolling start tests, and the science of how these motors work, it all paints a really clear picture of why that Porsche was just untouchable. At the end of the day, it wasn't just one thing, it was the whole package. First, it just had the most power, period. But crucially, it had that instant electric torque to launch it off the line with zero hesitation. Then, it had a brilliant all-wheel drive system to make sure all of that power actually got to the road, instead of just spinning the tires. When you put all that together, its weight disadvantage, it became totally irrelevant. You know, this whole race proves that the numbers on a spec sheet don't tell the whole story anymore. Not even close. How a car delivers its power can be so much more important than just how much power it has. And it really leaves you with a big question. In this new age of hybrids and electric tech, are we getting to the point where looking at a spec sheet is, well, kind of useless?